Right, good afternoon guys, and welcome to this afternoon's vlog. I find myself back at this truly majestic, mythical, even magical place. I come here twice in the last year or so by myself. Once it was around winter time, February 2023, and again myself and Adventures of Paul come here in the summer of last year in the dead of night, and it was really a spooky place. Anyway guys, it's been a year and it's about time we return to the Devil's Bridge, so let's do this. We're at the tail end of the thicket, wooded area as we speak. It's here when we done the vlog during the night time on our return from the Devil's Bridge, where we was confronted with some sort of creature. Could have been a fox, could have been a badger, could have been something, whatever it was. All we see was the eyes, which we captured on video as we was making our way back up. But yeah, it's sort of, this place is shrouded with mystery. It really is. Nobody knows exactly how long it's been here. It could have gone from Roman times. It's supposed to be haunted by a Roman centurion which sort of frequents the whole area, going back to Berkhamsted Castle, which is probably a mile behind me. There's supposed to be a monk that goes along this area, but why is there always has to be a monk? I don't know, I don't understand that. But anyway, I digress. This place itself really has a strange aurora around it. Last time I got to the entrance area and there was pretty much the remains of what I'd imagine was a chicken once or whatever, just in a pile of bones and flesh and things on the floor. And I made my way down to this really weird place. Now, people have done paranormal activities here before, doing the old spirit box. I've done it myself. I'm not going to bother so much this time. I've gone more generic, and my beliefs in it have slightly changed to what they were. It's sort of, for me, it's more when you're somewhere, it goes eerily quiet. The temperature changes. Now, bear in mind, this place has got its own temperature, regardless of what the temperature is around here, because it's so deeply embedded. It's a good 10 degrees lower than what it is for me out here at the moment, and these steps are pretty steep. Here we have, is it the Orford Arms? Unless it's changed hands. Yep, the Orford Arms. I've never had a drink in there as yet, but maybe one day I will. And this is the start of what the locals call Spooky Lane. Whether it's actually Spooky Lane or not, I do not know, but that's the name given to it. And just look at the structure, the old houses. I'm not sure the era. I'm usually pretty good at it, but that's maybe post-Elizabethan, I'm not sure. But the time period does kind of stipulate that when you get to the bridge. That was in the Elizabethan era. But first, I've got to handle one heck of a climb to get to this place, which starts now. So I'll try and keep my breath back as much as possible. But here goes. I mean, you guys can see exactly the same as I can as this continues to climb, and that is at least 75%. The camera is sort of pointing upwards in the direction I'm going. If I point it straight, it's like that. Well guys, I'm out of breath already. But just look at the roots growing out on the banks. It's like this all the way down to the Devil's Bridge. Probably homes now to bunnies, etc. So we're just simply continuing our climb. That's where we've come from, and we've got to continue all the way up there. Then it plateaus at the top, and then it starts to descend. Just totally bizarre, guys. I don't even know what trees they are. Ash, possibly? Right, we've reached the bow, or should we say the brow, of this enormous hill, and we come across this old tractor that usually just signs out that it's our resting place. and you come across this dog. Now this dog might not seem anything really, but it's significant, and I'll tell you why as we continue a little bit further on. That plays a major part in the Devil's Bridge. Not so much this character here. He's just been picked up, I guess, from a garden centre somewhere. But that dog there did not always sit there. Once I've caught my breath, we shall be descending down there into, if it's the Devil's Bridge, basically hell. Right, in we go, guys. This place is really strange. I've taken maybe 2 or 3 steps in and automatically it's 10 degrees cooler. Reason for this being probably because it's a huge wind tunnel. There's no way for the wind to escape once it's in, so it just furrows its way through here, through these high banks that you'll come across very shortly. Now I've been passed by a guy on a mountain bike and a couple walking a dog, but generally animals will not come down here of their own accord. They do not like it, and it's probably for this reason coming up about now. As we make our way further and further down, you'll see banks starting to appear either side. Your peripheral vision disappears and becomes more of a tunnel vision. Once you're in here, there is no way out. And I suppose the gap across is probably 8 feet. But it's really dense, really eerie, and really spooky. Now this original flint and stone wall is reminiscent of what you will see at Berkhamsted Castle. This is the original. All the brickwork that you see comes after that. Now, my beliefs changed after my first visit here, with it being called the Devil's Bridge, and I found something on the way out which I knew of its existence, but it brings the whole tale together and you get an understanding of the reason why it's called the Devil's Bridge, which I'll show you once we've got out of here. But we'll continue. It's a bit sketchy, not exactly sturdy underfoot. See what I mean, guys? Once you're in, unless you can seriously climb, get your fingers and feet in them holes, you are not getting out. And you can see what looks like some of the trees have collapsed from the top bank and fallen in. I dare say that happens a lot, and you start to get all the ivy and holly growing over the side. Certainly spooky. Now you imagine, I think it was about 1 o'clock in the morning when me and Paul done this last time, a year ago. With its weird noises, people have said they've seen red eyes and lights over the top. Make of that what you will. But that there in front of you is the Devil's Bridge. And now I do know of a little side path down the bottom of the hill which we can make our way up the top and stand on that. But yeah, you have to be careful. You can see where it's all collapsed. So this is where a lot of people hang out, get their spirit box out beneath the bridge and start trying to connect with those who have passed on. There's a tale that this place was all built by the Earl of Bridgewater to keep his wife out of the eye of the local gentry, because he was a jealous man and he wanted to keep her all for himself. Sort of something out of the mythological fairy tale, isn't it? But this is beneath the Devil's Bridge, and even here it's dropped another 5 degrees cooler. So it's lovely and fresh down here if you want to come down on a really hot summer's day. I've written on these walls myself with chalk. Some people come over here and scratch all sort of symbols. I've even found a geocache before, and that was situated up here. Just in this area here, there was a little plastic tub. A year ago, you filled in your name and you took a little gift out of it and left something behind. Well, I dare say that's long gone. But that's eerie. I'm guessing all told, the actual channel, the area with the bridge itself, is perhaps 400 to 600 meters long. And then it just ends up down the bottom here with some small cottages. And another reason why people, I guess, might turn around and say it is haunted, because it sits right on top of a graveyard. Right guys, this is our little walkway which will take us up to the top of the bridge. How bizarre is that? People had mentioned seeing monks. Just going back just to show you. Perhaps they were not seeing a dead monk, but these guys there, they are actual monks. Totally bizarre. I've said before, when I've made my way up here to the top, it's just as sketchy, just as eerie, if not more so, than the bridge itself. And this is of course an area where back in the day highwaymen would have been waiting. Carriage might have come across there, they jump on the back, money all your life, and that was it, they was away. Of which there were a couple of famous ones. The wicked lady who resided in Markyate. I know her name was Catherine. Was it Catherine Eddowes? Well, she was a wicked lady. She got shot one night doing a raid, and she had a secret passageway leading up to the bowels of this huge manor, because she was what they call gentry, rich and well off. But she done this as I suppose a weird hobby, and they found her body in a secret passageway. Now remember guys, I mentioned about that dog. These pillars here would have sat, there's one there, there's one the other side of the fence, just in there, remnants of a bit there as well. They would have sat where it would have been ornate years ago. So some would have sat there, some would have sat this side, and again probably the other side over there going towards the fields. Here's the remnants there. Now that said dog that we see would have adorned the top of one of these back in the day, probably stipulating that those who lived in the manor house, the Bridgewater, etc., were hunters. The old fox hunting that he's been outlawed but still goes ahead, that kind of thing. Now, the road itself, beyond where that gate is there, it would have gone in a straight line down there, and there's a road that banks round. I can't see a vehicle travelling up there at the moment, but that would have travelled along here, over this bridge, and made its way towards the Ashridge estate and Ashridge house, which you probably won't see, but this is like a natural line that banks round and the road meets over there in the distance. Now you got to remember how bad boggy and wet winters get over here, and you've got a slope and embankment you've got to get up with, probably horse and cart. That is probably the reason why this eventually closed. It come from, let's say, the Elizabethan era. Obviously don't want you going too far over there because it's covered in barbed wire. But I'm now standing aloft the Devil's Bridge. Would have been cool to see them monks come down. I just had a hint of orange as I looked back, or I was maybe brown, as I looked back up through this channel way, and just thought it was a couple of people walking through. But then as I got further down the side there, I noticed it was a couple of monks. Of course, these stories are up to everyone's interpretation, and make of them what you will. But as I said, everything I linked up, I sort of broke its own significant code some maybe 18 months ago, where I come across where we're going to go now. We might as well leave this place. It is, to all intensive purposes, just a bridge on a really strange alleyway, but the significance of what goes hand in hand with it, which is about maybe a mile further along, these World War I training trenches. Yes, actual World War I. Not everything was in France, Germany, etc. The Somme. They actually had to train for these things, and there was a garrison that was based, I believe it was Gaddesden, which is maybe a mile further on in front of me, and they had troops based there, and they used to train them in these trenches. And my belief is that they marched daily up this channel way. Obviously the golf course would not have been there, which we've got to make our way back through to get to it, but they marched up that hill to these trenches, done their training, and come back to their encampments. Perhaps even scaled these walls as part of the training. All open to debate, of course. Just my own personal view. When I show you something significant when we get there, which ties everything together. I did mention about the First World War and them trenches. This gate erected in their honour. And we find ourselves, guys, in an old church graveyard. It's just sort of all adds to the story. I was looking around to see if there's any gargoyles. I do love me a gargoyle. I've always been fascinated by what these would be. The old tombs that someone would have been laid to rest in, I guess. or the sadly departed, no longer with us. 1795. It's a heck of a long time. It's quite an idyllic and beautiful setting here. Not the largest of graveyards, but in amongst the trees here. Look at that tomb there. That is stunning. Of course, we wish the utmost of respect to those who lay here and their families. And as I said, this backs on to our spooky lane and our Devil's Bridge. Seriously old tombs over there amongst the bramble bushes. And this is the old church at Nettlesden that frequents the entrance to Spooky Lane and the Devil's Bridge. You may turn around and just simply say, hauntingly beautiful. Look at that. Tombs enveloped amongst the trees. Really is stunning, guys. Right, well, let's make our way out of here. Back up Spooky Lane under the Devil's Bridge and get to these trenches. One thing you can truly say as I traverse my way back, it's not a truly inviting place, that's for sure. I'd mentioned about some of the famous grave robbers. The names come to me of one of the guys that used to frequent here, and his actual tomb is at a place called Bourne End, not far from here, just off the A41. Hemel Hempstead, the next town along from here. He's just off the bypass in a field. It's usually adorned by cows. There is a simple white stone, and it turns round and says that here lies the body of Robert Snooks. His actual name was James, but he went by the name of Robert Snooks, and he was the last highwayman to be executed in England. Can't remember the era, but it's all there. I've done vlogs on it myself if you wish to check those out, or any of the other spooky stuff I've done in the past. Much obliged if you do. It makes these worthwhile. But as I said, that there is Elizabethan. I would imagine at some point all of this will collapse over the top, and then I dare say someone will come along and scoop it up. But yep, that was the Devil's Bridge. Access to this place, you can make your way to Nettlesden by car. There's a place called Water End, just on the outskirts of Hemel Hempstead. Make your way down there, follow the road in, find the little village of Nettlesden, and then come up this lane if you're doing it that way. If, like me today, you're using public transport, you want to get off at Berkhamsted train station, and then it's pretty much a straight mile. You'll come up towards the World War I trenches first, and then there's a monument, then there's a golf course, then a permissive driveway. You make your way down to where the Orford Arms is, and then you're at the start of the spooky lane from the other side, and one heck of a climb, and then you make your way down into the bowels of hell. Do it, guys, it's worth it. I had said that on our way back last time, in the pitch black darkness, early hours of the morning, we was met by a set of eyes, or several sets of eyes. They come from this area. They were sitting in these trees. If you watch the video, I think it's called Return to the Devil's Bridge. We done it at night, myself and Adventures of Paul. Absolutely knackered. Made our way back through here, and we started hearing noises in this wooded area. Could be peacocks, could be pheasants, that sort of thing. They make a really weird noise when the sun starts to set. We made our way to here, and I just glanced some eyes, and they just seemed to follow us through the wooded area here. And we got to this point and I started filming them, and you could see, as you looked at the trees, little sets of eyes looking at you. Pretty quirky. Don't know what it is, so you can simply put it down as being unexplained. As I said, again, one of them monks. This isn't an illusion, this is on camera. Some shot that. Of course, we have to cut across this 18-hole golf course. I think it's Potton End. I don't know if somebody will know the area, will know the name of the golf course. It's a really nice looking golf course for sure. Not my purpose of being here whatsoever. It just happens to be something I've got to cut through. There's permissive bridleways, public footpaths, there's trails going through the golf course itself. And as I said, so we've made our way back from the Devil's Bridge, which has been a mile, again uphill, but we've plateaued off. From now on in, it's all pretty much downhill. And we are going towards these World War I training trenches, which when I first come across them a couple of years ago, it was, seriously, they actually exist? I never thought they would even have such a thing over here, but they certainly do exist. They are here. We're almost in amongst them, and there's about 800 metres of them left. I think it was local volunteers come in and redug them out, and there's a significant plaque which sort of brings the whole story together of coming up here to the Devil's Bridge and coming to these trenches, and you're sort of thinking, well, what have they got in common? You're soon going to find out, guys. These are some of your bomb holes, and you can see the tracks making their way around. We'll see if we can get into a few of them. The problem you've got is I've got shorts on, and this time of year, I remember when I done it with Paul, they were full of stinging nettles. During the winter that's not so much of a problem, but I'd certainly recommend it to you guys to come and have a look. And this whole area itself, minding the horsey muck, is a precursor to the Ashridge estate, which is fascinating in itself. You've got the cabin in the woods from the movie The Descent, actual film movie location that's been abandoned for, oh, must be nearly 200 years, I'd imagine. You've also got some seriously old oak trees. You've got an ice house in the woods, Ashridge estate itself, the Bridgewater monument, which I always used to think was by Beacon. And these, as I said, are World War I training trenches. And this point here is where we bring everything together in the story itself. The reason why I say they're connected, because we've just been to the Devil's Bridge, and that is the Devil's Own. I should leave that on there for any of you guys that want to have a read. But yeah, basically we've just been to the Devil's Bridge. We're sort of kind of off the map where we are to where this shows, but the significance of it being called the Devil's Bridge and the Devil's Own, and knowing that there was barracks within the hills that are around the area, logically turns around and says that it was called that because the troops probably marched under that bridge. I think we've had enough time. Obviously pause the video if you want to have a closer read, and then of course people have come along and placed poppies, poppy appeal, and rightly so. So they're quite shallow to start off with as you make your way round. I can already see that there are stinging nettles in amongst it. How far we get, we don't know. Not getting farther that way, you get ripped to pieces. This is the sort of thing that maybe your grandparents experienced if they were fighting even in the Second World War. Even nowadays, the war that's going on between Russia and the Ukraine, there is still trench warfare involved there. I'll try and get in from another point because that is well and truly overgrown. There's actually a small poppy cross placed here, so I'd imagine whoever this is, that could be their photograph, and that's what they once looked like. Here we go. Really, really sad. God rest his soul. Only a youngster again. I imagine there will be training with live rounds, etc. Said the story many times with my grandfather. He ended up doing a little bit of trenches, but they were on a hilltop. His war, Second World War, he was trained in mountain warfare. For maybe 6 months he was climbing up and down the cliffs of Dover, and then, as is normally the case with an almighty foobar from the British Army, he was sent to North Africa. Fought his way alongside the Desert Rats with his battalion, the Buffs. Remember them, they used to have like a Welsh dragon as a motif on their caps. And after they'd fought their way through North Africa, his true calling came. So I can move this log so I can get through, and then I'll put it back in a bit. And they sent him to Monte Cassino, which supposedly was an impenetrative fort, and the RAF bombed it to pieces, yet everything was held firm. The Germans were well trained and trenched in, and my grandfather's guys, the Buffs and a few other regiments, went to take Monte Cassino, and 2 to a penny they were slaughtered. My grandfather was listed as missing in action for a couple of days. They found him in a hospital, all shell shocked, etc. They patched him up, told him that he was maybe one of 2 survivors. He went and got himself back in the war, joined up, I believe it was the Royal Fusiliers, and along with those guys and the brave Polish, they took said Monte Cassino and a pathway to Rome. It just shows you how easy we've got it in comparison, although I fear everything that they fought for is being eroded away. Times are not the same anymore. What we consider to be the true values of which we have adhered and lived with, even just a matter of respect, it's all gone out the window. And this is a wonderful thing, wonderful place to take if you've got youngsters and they're into anything like this. They can come down here with a parent and explore them. Open 24/7. Obviously I'd say it's a lot better to do this during the daytime hours. I've done it both daytime and in the dead of night. And it can get pretty spooky and eerie when you've got a low-laying fog over the top of it. Not going to go too much further. I'm going to sort of give you guys a lay of the land, so to speak. Show you what it's all about. I don't know how many of these places there are. Certainly wasn't the only one in the country. Yeah, it's come to a bit of an end here, so I think we'll kind of make our way slowly back and out, and I'll catch up with you guys on the other side. Right, let's leave this general vicinity and finish up with something. Tell you what, right next to the train station, which we've got to get our train back to Bletchley, there is the ruins of a castle. So we'll briefly pass that. Okay guys, last point of call, because that is where I've got to get my train from. That's Berkhamsted train station. But before I catch that and end this vlog, just show you this little fella here. Adjacent to it is, which began its life in 1066, this is what remains of Berkhamsted Castle. It was a half brother of William the Conqueror. He of the Battle of Hastings beat the last true Saxon king, Harold, with the old arrow in the eye. But after that period of time, Battle of Hastings, and the Normans and their conquest took over Great Britain, moved their way from the south coast upwards. His half brother settled here, and they built this Mott and Bailey Castle. And what remains behind this shack here, which is like a welcome centre, is the remains of that said castle. I'm not going to have a full tour of it. I've toured it before, I've put it on video. It sits in huge grounds, guys, it really does. I think the old kitchen area was over the back there. The Bailey stood adorning the top of that huge hill there, and what remains at the top of there is a huge well. He said it's pretty much just the infrastructure, the perimeter wall that's left standing, But when you think how old that is, thousand years old. Pretty much says you are here. There's your Bailey, which would have been a door on the top of that. Huge area. And it would have been like a village, little hamlet area that would have been situated in these grounds below. And the half brother of William the Conqueror would have been the ruler of these lands. Life and death over all the subjects that are within this realm. Do something wrong then, you had all manner of unpleasantries done to you. Hung, drawn and quartered, cut in half. But yeah, I just thought I'd add this to it. And as I said, when I pointed out the Devil's Bridge, and I said the early flint and stonework, that the walls here are made of the same stuff. So I'd imagine there must have been in the area some form of quarry for them to get all this material. You know what, guys, I'm a glutton for punishment, so let's get atop the Bailey itself, up the staircase. I would have done somewhere in excess of 8 miles today anyway. This will just top it off, then I can get home and collapse while this vlog is uploading the things I do for you guys. So for that one, I think it's at least worth a thumbs up. I don't know, the things I do, and they're not the easiest of steps, that's for sure. And obviously these would not have been stone in the time, they would have been wooden all the way to the top. Certainly out of breath. Anyway guys, we've reached the summit and that is a spectacular view. As I said, there's the train station. That's my way back to Bletchley, where we've come from. See the tree line at the top there? Probably about half a mile further on from that is where your trenches are. And then say another mile further on, it's pretty much a straight line up the road that goes parallel with this. And you become level with the Orford Arms and then the ascent on the Devil's Bridge. I did mention that it had a well, and that will carry on to the moat and beyond, which sits below us. Certainly a bit blowy up here, guys, and that moat in its heyday that you see around it would have been pretty much touching the edge. Over years it's sort of dried up, even with the heavy rains we get nowadays. Yep, that's what I climbed up for you guys. It's still it's not a bad place, that's for sure. And this is one of many stories to this fascinating area. The other side of that train tracks, can't remember, it might be called Castle Hill Drive, something like that. There's a private boys' school. In that school resides a case. In that case resides a collar. Now that collar was not for an animal. That collar was for a young boy by the name of Peter, because in the time of George I, and if you remember the story, the infamous stories of Hamelin the Pied Piper, Well, in that area there is an actual story, that of Peter the Wild Boy. They found Peter living in the wild, probably brought up by wolves in the forests of Germany, and they captured him and kind of brought him back to the UK as a pet. And the Princess of Wales at that time, Princess Catherine, she was fascinated by him. He had a deep, meaningful interest with her, would follow her around like a sheep. And sadly, over time, the novelty wore off. She got tired of him. She retired him to a farm around this area. And the collar is because on a number of occasions he would disappear for days on end and end up on the Ashridge estate. So because he couldn't talk and he was on hands and on all fours basically and foraging for food on the ground, they put a collar on him, same as you would do with a dog nowadays, to let you know who his owner was. And he lived out his days here, and I think he died in, was it 1785 possibly? It was either 1785 or 1725 as an old man then. But it's a true story, and there's a place called Northall, a little hamlet that sits off probably about a mile to my right, and then you take a turning down the side of a church and you end up in the Ashridge estate. There's a little churchyard there. Walk down towards the front door of that church. I've done a vlog on it myself, and there's a grave there and it says Peter the Wild Boy, because it's a true story. Anyway guys, a bit red in the face here. I'm truly exhausted. As I said, by the time this day's done, getting home from Bletchley, I've got a mile to walk home. So I would have done in excess of easily 8, probably 8.5 miles today. A lot of it on climbs like that, 75% easily. So I dare say I'll be coming down with cramp. That would be great for my sciatica and my nervous condition that I have with back problems from years ago that goes down the back of both legs. But nevertheless, I come out here, I've done it, I've enjoyed what I've done, and that's the main thing, is that I enjoy it as well as presenting it to you. Otherwise there's no point. It doesn't come across properly if you're struggling with it. And with that guys, enjoy the rest of your week. I think we're going to go to the zoo on Saturday or Sunday possibly. We have a monthly update there, so be sure to catch that one. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate the views, obviously the likes, the comments, and thank you. See you in the movies. Bye for now.